humans. As we grow and as a species and medical breakthroughs lower the mortality rate, causing a rise in population as well as technological advancements that further the conveniences that we enjoy every day, there's a cost to all these factors. Chris Jordan highlights this cost through his look at the massive amount of excess waste that we produce through images of large amounts of different debris, flotsam and jetsam found around our world. So to simply label him a conservationist would be selling his work short. He has a dynamic resume not only in dealing with conservation, but the work that highlights damages from natural disasters and social unrest that we sometimes forget about in a first world society until it rears its ugly head in destructive ways. Chris Jordan does not simply point to a world he wants to save and show through his photography, but instead holds a mirror up to society's face in a way that shows he is more than a simple label by his ability to tune into the minds of people. Chris Jordan's first major collection that we will look at, Intolerable Beauty, Portraits of American Mass Consumption, follows the journey of many of the products we find around us in our consumer habitat. The collection is from a variety of waste management facilities in different areas of industry strewn along the North Pacific West. Jordan displays massive amounts of shifting piles of forgotten, discarded odds and ends that are from our lives, as well as waste from industrial sites. Some examples of images is a large mountain-like pile of sawdust residing in Tacoma. This is a striking item because of its many small dune-like offshoots that help to really enhance the size. Jordan does a great job of finding something so haunting because it looks so similar to the natural world, like it could be any other sand dune, but to know it's made of consumer waste really puts an emotional impact to the image. A look at some of the pieces in his collection, Intolerable Beauty, will show an interesting pattern to his approach for photography. In Crushed Cars No. 2 and Pallets No. 2, for example, not only does he use this massive amount of items to draw the eye, but there's integrated multiple colors and is also present in a way to move the eye around the piece to fully absorb it. Chris Jordan does not simply take an image from the environment that he surrounds himself with, but in many instances manipulates a scene to fit an artistic vision. A great example of this would be Recycling Yard No. 6. This image depicts many compact trash bits in rows and columns. Instead of just boring rows, in the center there have been put an unwrapped and tumbling chaotic scramble of this trash. This kind of small detail that Jordan makes in his work is a great way to give depth and catch the eye, instead of just having the same exact thing across the entire image. Instead, he brings a more dynamic and diverse look to the image. One of the words I would say to define much of Chris Jordan's work would be busy. In almost all of the photographs he takes, there's always a lot going on. No matter where your eyes are drawn, there is something there screaming the message that consumerism unchecked is harming the world that we live in. Jordan walks a fine tightrope, avoiding cluttering his pieces, but instead threads the needle and successfully using a massive amount of an object's well to present his point. His project, Running the Numbers, is a great example of this, by taking a single object and duplicating it onto a grand scale. It could be any number of things, from paper bags, cigarette boxes, to plastic bottles and cups. It is important for Jordan that the full scope of his work and throughout his message be appreciated. This is why he tends to lean more towards his work being displayed in a large print. The reason being that so even though there are sometimes item counts that reach into the thousands or millions in his photography, there is still able to pick out immense details from individual items. It could be a design on the back of a package or being able to read the logo on a plastic bottle, but it's this large format that helps to bring out this detail. The benefit to this is keeping from being lost in the vast numbers. Chris Jordan is someone who focuses and driven heavily into statistics of global consumerism and we find ourselves living in. He enjoys taking these statistics of how we use and consume and translate those numbers into art pieces. Because of this, he understands that it could be hard for people to grasp the full magnitude of the numbers, and that they are so large, and because of this impact of these numbers, can be deadened by this effect of not being able to grasp how much there really is. This use of detail inside of a massive group of objects does it well to counteract this, being able to see the details of or read advertisements off of an object surrounded by sometimes millions of others can keep the viewer from being lost in a sea of refuse. This effect helps to drive home the individual objects we focus on in one piece can be in the millions and host of others. When many artists attempt to bring to focus a topic that may be controversial or difficult for society at large to face, it can be a challenge to win over viewers and traverse the shifting waters of critics throughout the world about the piece. Chris Jordan is one such artist who tries to spotlight topics that people would rather hide under the rug. But as Chris Jordan shows his imagery, there is a lot that the world tries to hide. When looking for Jordan's experiences with the viewers in his work, I came across an interesting interview with Jorg Kohlberg of Orion magazine. Chris Jordan mentions how there hasn't really been much backlash from people, and he attributes it to the fact that there may be a silent agreement that something's going on or countrywide denial. One idea, brought up by an interview from the Seattle Times, is that it is hard to exactly pinpoint Chris Jordan's work. They say that it is difficult because his work is beautiful, so it could be fit into an artistic field, but the message behind it makes it more of a conservationist piece, so many may find it confusing and hard to fully appreciate his work. What I find interesting about Chris Jordan's work is how, almost like an anglerfish, he can take something beautiful and hang it in front of us, and then we get drawn in. And then, before we know it, we're face to face with the teeth of a serious problem that we need to deal with, and we got there because we were drawn in by something beautiful. I also enjoy the fact that he can take something that is so common, yet connect it to my life. This is not just a giant global problem that is far away from us, but instead, it's consistent of soda bottles and cans and things that I use every day, so I'm a lot closer to the problem than I might have first realized. Chris Jordan does a great way of bringing these things together and making the problem our problem too.